Hello and welcome to the AGH on Film. My name is Ryan Ferguson. I'm the curator of film at the Art Gallery of Hamilton. Each week, we take a more in-depth look at one of the films currently screening during our virtual cinema, which can be found online at artgalleryofhamilton.com. This week, we're discussing the film Beyond the Visible, Hilma of Klint, a film that takes an in-depth look at a pioneering artist in the world of abstraction, and one whose work was seldom, if ever, seen during her lifetime. The film's a fascinating look into the creative mind of Hilma af Klint and also profiles a lot of the work to have her place in art history recognized. We also looked at this film last week. Our curator of contemporary art, Melissa Bennett, and her guest painter, Andrea Kastner, discussed Hilma's work, mysticism in the arts, their experiences seeing Hilma's work in person for the first time, and the patriarchy in art history. It was a very thoughtful and interesting discussion, which is available to watch on our YouTube page now. And today, Halina Dyrschka is with us. Halina is a producer and director based in Berlin, Germany. She's the founder of Ambrosia Film. Beyond the Visible, Hilma af Klint is her debut feature as a director, and we're very fortunate to have her today to discuss the film. Thank you for joining us, Halina.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So, hello from Berlin.
Yeah, and how is everything in Berlin today?
Yeah, it's fine. We have the best of weathers and we are able to go for a walk and everybody's enjoying the sun right now. So,
oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Here in Canada, we're a few weeks away from that, but we're looking forward to it as well.
It comes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Halina, it's been close to a year since you and I first talked about this film over an email exchange. I was at the Canadian premiere of the film at Hot Docs last spring. I'm curious what the past year has been like for you and for this film as it's grown from its festival runs to a theatrical release now.
Yeah, I mean, I had a quite overwhelming year last year. I was twice in Canada. Haven't been in Canada before, but in a year twice. That was really nice. And I enjoyed the Toronto Film Festival very much. I thought it was absolutely fabulous. And even very interesting filmmakers and people you can meet there. And I was absolutely happy about this response of the film, of course. And it was actually in Toronto where people queued in line. I mean, 400 people. That was really fabulous for me. And yeah, I'm very happy that that so many people love Hilma af Klint and that I could even get more people intrigued to be interested in Hilma af Klint's work.
So this is your debut feature-length directorial project. What was it about Hilma af Klint that led you to decide that this was going to be the project that you devoted this a massive amount of time towards?
Yeah, actually, I was working on a quite different project, a fiction film. But the first time I saw her paintings at the exhibition here in Berlin, it came in 2013 here to Berlin. I was speechless first when I saw them, but then I felt so angry right in the middle of the museum, and I couldn't believe that this was shown to me so late. And I thought, and I asked myself, and I was talking to the curator there at the opening show, and I said, how can that be that I have never heard of her? I have read before I came to the exhibition, I've read a lot about Hilma af Klint. And when I was standing there, realizing this complete oeuvre in front of me was so huge, so colorful, so bold, and so significant, I immediately knew that everything that was said by that time, even nowadays, that she was forgotten, must have been a lie. And so I decided right away to make a film about that. I didn't know that but it went, I mean, it was not easy to finance in the first place, but it went on, it always went on. So I could really finish this film first. So, and I was working 5 years on that, really. Yeah, because I had to do a lot of research, but it was a fabulous time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's obviously a very heavy research project. The body of work that Hilma created is so vast, not just the incredible number of paintings, but the journals. There's thousands of journals, I think it is.
No,
Hundreds at least.
there are more than 20,000 pages, and
Yes. Okay.
it just, and that sounds not much, 125 notebooks.
Okay.
But you have, every notebook has 300 or 400 pages, so you have really thousands of pages. And although I learned, of course, I had to learn Swedish, and Swedish is, yeah, a little bit familiar with German, but not much. So I just had to learn. That was the first thing I did after the exhibition. I got myself a teacher here in Berlin, because I thought I actually need to read a little bit, that I could read and see what is important for me. But of course, I couldn't read all the notebooks. And
No.
but I had help, and Johan af Klint was a big help. I mean, the grandnephew of Hilma af Klint, who was running the foundation by this time, he was extremely helpful, and it was very nice actually going with him into the archives. And also, he showed me all the places where Hilma af Klint lived. The first research trip I did to Sweden, we were traveling a lot from Stockholm to the nature parts and the countryside where she stayed. And then I realized what possibilities I had to show in the film, because when I started, I had exactly 3 photographs of Hilma af Klint and no film material, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when you have this massive body of work, and you're, as you're saying, it's a long-term project that involved learning a new language, how do you, as an artist and a filmmaker, how do you approach that body of work and distill it into 70 to 90 minutes of feature-length film?
Yeah, I mean, well, of course, I didn't read all the pages and everything what was there, but first of all, I had a look at I was lucky, because by the time I started the research, the Modern Museum in Stockholm had done one important thing. They have digitalized her whole oeuvre. So I was able to watch at all of her paintings. But those are more than 1,000 paintings, big and small ones, but you have them digitalized. And I just realized now that even now, when I'm going through it again and again, and I have seen them really for hundreds of times, I still recognize something new. I think, oh, why didn't I remember this one? So it's really a huge amount of paintings. And it's so interesting, because sometimes she has written in the paintings, and I would say this even goes beyond art, because she doesn't have created just a huge amount of art pieces, but this is also something she really tried to figure out. What does it mean to be on this planet? And let's say, what the hell are we doing here? So, yeah, I mean, this is really something important. This was, I think, the question that drove her the most. And that's what you can see. And that's why it is always so interesting to look at her paintings. And so I had really to come closer to what her intention was. And that helped a bit to pick some of the most, let's say, yeah, I tried to pick of the most interesting quotes of her, give her a voice through the film. But of course, what I also really liked is in the film, I'm going very detailed. I'm going to show details of the paintings, and of course, in cinema it's even bigger. But when you see it on a big screen, you can see a whole painting. You think, oh, that's great. But then when you see one of the 10 largest, you realize that this is just a tiny little detail. But it could be the whole world. It could be just one painting. But and that's how huge it is. And the micro and the macrocosmos is a huge role in all of her writings and her paintings. So that was a good, yeah, I think that was a good possibility for me to address that. All the details and even the huge, so because this is what she's looking at. She's looking at life, she's looking at a little flower here on the planet, and then she looks at the universe. And so you need to get that all together. And one thing I really enjoyed doing the film was, because that is something that just film can do, because you can do magic sometimes in films, is the crossovers. I knew that I'm using a lot of crossovers to combine nature with her paintings, because I wanted to show that she somehow is showing life. And nature is something that humankind hasn't created. And that was important, to address something that we haven't done. We haven't invented that. It was here before us. And that's how she looked at it as well. And then you can do those crossovers, but I think what was very interesting is also to do the crossovers with her series. For example, the Swan series, you do a crossover, and then you can see how accurate she was painting, actually. Very mathematical in a way, but actually you see how one painting is developing the next. You know, you go, really, it's really a journey. It's not just a series and it's changing, but it's really like they're coming out of each other. So I really, yeah. So, but that was a process, of course, with my editors. You know, I started with this idea, but then everybody tried something new.
Well, and when you're telling a story that is almost entirely untold, and there's so much information to communicate the totality of an artist's life, I am curious about how the narrative threads that run throughout the film developed. Were they, conscious decisions you were making going into the making of the film, or are the threads starting to appear during the editing process? Or is it a mix?
Yeah, I would say, of course, it's a mix. It's a mix. Sometimes I mean, some of the things were quite evident in the beginning. I knew I had to address also the problem that she was excluded, because that's how I started. I said, okay, why don't I start there where I was when I was standing there and saying, what? No, it's not true. You can't tell me that, because you can say, oh, I don't like this art or this painting. That's okay. But you can't say I have forgotten it. The moment you have seen it, you don't forget it. I think this must be a lie, and especially for art historians. And so those things became quite clear. But of course, with the documentary, and for me it was the first documentary, you realize that in the editing process, some things you thought would work do not work. And then you have to come up with something new. But I mean, that's the great thing about art. You can find other ways and new ways. And what was so interesting was also, when I started, I was quite alone with my material, because I had to wait before I was doing half a year I was doing with the editor most of the work, to organize things and stuff. And then I had to wait for my second editor because before she started, and I was alone with my material, and that was very great. And that is actually something Hilma of Klint talks a lot about, that you really have to be for yourself and in stillness somehow. And afterwards I realized, oh, that was the time where I had a lot of ideas came up, which I didn't knew that they existed, let's say, because I was just trying to find ways. And then with the editor, it's very interesting if somebody comes in new who doesn't know anything. He asks you, or she did, my editor Antje, she asked me a lot of questions where I always thought, but that's completely obvious. And she said, no, it is not. And so you go on and talk a lot. And so everything went its way. So it's an interesting process, very, very great, yeah.
Yeah, it almost builds as a mystery as you're sort of discovering new steps along the way. One of the things that the film goes into some depth regarding is the potential ties between Hilma and Kandinsky, and the possibility. It teases at the possibility that he may have even seen her work.
I'm happy you're mentioning it.
Can you talk about that decision as a filmmaker? And also, I'm curious if there have been any, if there's been new information or insight into that thread of the story since the film.
Well, the decision to say that, I'm just saying that at the voiceover, that it was really clear that in the same year Hilma af Klint met Rudolf Steiner, he also met Kandinsky. And Kandinsky was very interested in Rudolf Steiner's way of working, and he was just at the beginning of his anthroposophical society and everything. And honestly, I don't know. Nobody knows so far. But I think we haven't looked at every written letters there are, or correspondences, whatever. maybe we find something. But I just wanted, I put it, of course, on purpose in the film, because I want people to discuss that, because I think, honestly, art history is so extremely narrow-minded, and I think we need discussions like that. It's not that I'm saying this is right or something, but I think there is a possibility, and there still is a possibility. And for example, what also occurred to me is when I was right at the end of almost ending the editing process, this postcard from London popped out. Johan af Klint called me and said, Halina, there's a postcard. And I said, oh, that's so great. I was waiting for this postcard for years. I thought there must be an evidence somewhere that she has been maybe there. And it was the evidence that she was really showing her paintings in London. And so we knew what we were looking for. And a friend of mine found in the archive, she was living in London, I sent her to the archive in London and said, look at this archive, because probably you find, and she found the program of this spiritual conference. And there we knew Hilma af Klint was showing her paintings. And Piet Mondrian, was alive at this time still, and he was living in Amsterdam, not too far away, from London, and he was a theosophist all of his life. I wonder if he visited this spiritual conference. Possible, because he always wanted to meet Rudolf Steiner, which he couldn't. He was dead by this time, but maybe he was, I don't know, maybe he was connected with the people over there, and maybe he has met even Hilma af Klint. Maybe they talked, maybe he saw, we don't know exactly what she showed there, but, it's possible that Mondrian and Hilma af Klint just standing in front of a painting and saying, oh, that's interesting. Tell me about the way you work, Miss af Klint, and it's just a possibility. And I like that we just think in these ways, because I don't think we always should be so sure about things, especially in art history when it's written. I have the feeling at some point someone has written something and nobody wants to change it anymore, because it's easier this way.
Yeah, there are so many possibilities where you have incomplete stories. An interesting thing for our organization, I obviously work at the Art Gallery of Hamilton. We have started a bit of research based on showing this film.
Yeah.
Our gallery was founded in 1914 as the result of a donation of paintings by an artist named William Blair Bruce. So Bruce was born here in Hamilton, but spent much of his late life in Sweden. And his partner in Sweden, Carolina Benedicts Bruce, it turns out, studied at the Royal Swedish Academy of Arts at the same time as Hilma.
Oh.
So our curators have done our curators have done extensive research on Bruce, obviously, because our whole organization was founded on a donation of his work. And so he and his partner Carolina had they lived on an island in Sweden, worked till the ends of their lives there.
I know them, right? And I think the house is still there.
Yes, it's still a
museum, right?
It's a museum, and they do artist residencies there as well. It's called Expo. And there is apparently one of Hilma's landscape studies from school is there.
As well. Okay. Yeah, I haven't visited that, but people told me about that, and I had done. I remember that that's time ago, but I read about both of them. Very interesting, because they both worked, and and sculpture, and and that's interesting. Oh. Aha.
Yeah. So it's taken us on a little bit of an investigative journey as well.
Oh yeah, let me know what you will find out. We are all very interested.
Yeah, all sorts
many
of
people are working on Hilma af Klint right now, and I'm that's very interesting. Yeah, they have been both. Yeah, you see.
And there are extensive journals and letters, correspondence letters at Brucepo as well that you never know. They're made through going through archives. You never know what you're going to find.
Yeah, and it's really hard. What I found out, if you go to archives, especially, for example, when I was in Dornach in Switzerland, and the Rudolf Steiner archive, and they have huge archives. So if you put something at the wrong place, you will never find. I mean, it will maybe take you years to find it again. Or I mean, that's really hard work. But even to look close at things is also something. So this is a very interesting story. I'm really curious what will come out of that, because if you haven't looked, even if you have, for example, if somebody writes a biography about this, what was his name, William Bruce or something, and he has some correspondence with him, maybe he mentions something about her or another artist, but if you don't know what he's talking about, you don't pay any attention. Because this is something that also occurred to me while doing the research on the film, that on many, even me, when I was reading some letters, it really took me sometimes twice to read them to realize, oh, but this is important, because sometimes maybe you have to look there and then you find something. It's but that makes it so very, very interesting.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mystery.
Yeah, it's a mystery. Yeah.
I think just to switch gears on the film a little bit here, because we haven't even really talked directly about the most important aspect of Hilma's work. It's the art itself. The photographing that artwork, filming that artwork, could be a very difficult task, and it's so beautifully presented in the film. I thought perhaps you'd maybe take a couple minutes to talk about how you approached doing that, what the how tight your window of opportunity to film the works were, and how that all was done.
Actually, that was maybe also a very time-consuming part to film Hilma af Klint's paintings, because especially the 10 largest are so huge. But when I was starting, and the exhibition was 2013 until the end of 13 in Berlin, it was clear it was going to Malaga and some other place, so to Spain and some other place, but I didn't know for how long I would be able to film the paintings, when they were hanging, because as I have seen the archive afterwards, I knew that I couldn't do this filming in the archive. It was a tiny little archive, and it was a mess, and they didn't have a lot of money or organization, so I needed to go. And so fortunately, the tour of this exhibition, it was touring 2 more years through Europe, and so I traveled there. So I was very lucky, because I was going to the Louisiana Museum in Copenhagen, near Copenhagen, which is a beautiful museum. And they were absolutely, the staff was really, that was the best museum staff I've ever met, I have to say, because they were very open, and they let us in when we could do the filming when nobody was there, before the museum opened. But thing is, if you film details of such a big canvas, it's 3 meters 20 high. It's really time consuming, because even the details, you have to put on new lenses and change the lenses, and then did this detail, and then have to look there and that, and then you need to go to get the wider shot and whatever. So you take hours just for the 10, or even days, I have to say, sometimes. And so we were really, actually we had long days, because I said, okay, just take everything what we can get. And I have to confess, we did not have of course we were under budget. I don't know if you say that in English like that. We didn't have the full budget of the film what we would have needed. But so you have also to be very, let's say, creative in a way. But I had fabulous, my DOPs were absolutely great in this way, and also very creative, because I didn't have a crane or something. I couldn't go, I didn't have the money to afford, big technical things just to get everything done. But it worked anyhow. I mean, that's how we managed, even in the simple ways you can get through. I think even when you have ideas, you can make it. And for everybody, that was a great experience, I think. And for me, I would have to say, even with Hilma af Klint's work and the way how we addressed that, and when we talked with the DOPs how to show it, that really, I think, it changed completely for me the way how I would film my next project. Yeah.
Given that you spent so much intimate time with the pieces, is there a particular series or piece or that you formed a really strong relationship with during the process of that?
Yeah, I mean, there are. I couldn't pick one, but of course, the 10 largest are the most impressive ones, of course. But I like, for example, from the 10 largest, I like number 5, because I think this is really, I can connect with that completely. And this is one that they are not showing very often. It has this big flower, and it looks like a hippie painting. It looks like, it remembers me of the time when I was born, because I was born 75. So it looks for me like, I think, oh, she could have painted that in this year. I mean, it was even way before that, but this is one I can connect. And then I have to say, I love her aquarelle. No, you say watercolors, the watercolors. Not all of them have been shown, and I will put some of them at the bonus track of the DVD, because I think you really need to have a closer look to the watercolors she did. Those are also painting something you have to look twice or 3 times, then you see something. And even the simplest of her paintings. I love, for example, one of the aquarelles I'm showing is also, it's just dark blue, and you have a golden chain coming, from the universe, and it's just nothing. This is one of my favorites because it says so much. You could even go back to the Greeks, to the antiques, because you have that also, I don't know where exactly, with Socrates or someone, they talk about this golden chain in the cosmos, where you have all the wisdom, and she's just putting it in such a simple way, and it looks perfect to me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very beautiful.
Yeah.
How does working on this film, you mentioned that, photographing and shooting the work will affect how you work on your next project or on an upcoming or in the future. How has taking this really intimate dive into an artist's work and presenting it like this, has it affected you as an artist working in the world of film?
Yeah. Oh, I would say a lot. I mean, not just in the way of film or in the world of film, because I'm always saying I had the most meaningful 5 years of my life, and it's completely clear that I can't go now less than that, which is quite a challenge. But I think, no, it was really very, very important for me to do this film, because I think that the most important, the most important thing about Hilma af Klint's work is the message, or I don't like the word message, but she has something significant to say. And it is not about her. She is not saying, I have done that, and you should look how great I have done that. But she's saying, at one point, she's mentioning this work is important for humankind. And this is something she meant in a very humble way, because she said, this is something that is given to me by whoever, whatever, fantasy, creativity, and it came out, but it's important for you. And that's how I felt when I was diving into that. So it's something that affected me very much, but more like a big, like a memory. It's something, it remembers me of what is important in life. And that is something that I include very much. But of course, as an artist as well, as a director, as I said, so the way I look at things probably, or I would probably choose now, what am I going to show in this scene or whatever? I would probably choose different things. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's amazing. Yeah, it's a beautiful experience to take with you then forward.
Yeah.
What then are you working on now?
Actually, I have more projects, and I'm actually like to do a film actually about a German artist, again an artist, but she was also a scientist, but back in the 17th century. But this is going to be a fiction, a feature film, and but actually, since we have this crazy times right now, I'm reading a lot of Henry David Thoreau. I'm missing a really good film about Henry David Thoreau, I have to say. Probably I don't know if this is my task to do, but I think he is important to reread right now. A very independent person with a very clear mind. And I think I'm actually looking now for I like biographies that doesn't look like others. It doesn't matter if it's a woman or a man, you know, it doesn't matter. But I like if people have really followed their own path, because I think it is a bit of a lie when people think, or everybody says you have to follow your own path. But I see that 90% of the people don't. And I'm very interested in the biographies that people do, because why do you have to do everything like everybody else? Of course, you questions them. Everybody questions you, but in the end, you have done your way, and I think that is the also one very important point about Hilma af Klint's life. I think this has been a very, very successful life because she did it like she wanted to do it, and for me, she looks even at her photographs very content, and that's the best how it can get.
I think that's a perfect summary of the film. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for taking time out to speak with us this week. Did you have anything you wanted to add before we go?
No, I wish everybody joy and to look at the film and to discover Hilma af Klint and maybe even some personal aspects about your own life. So I wish everybody joy watching it and hope, yeah. So thank
Yep.
you very much.
Thank you again. The film is Beyond the Visible, Hilma af Klint. It is screening in our virtual cinema at artgalleryofhamilton.com until May 1st. It will be also screening at several other virtual cinemas, probably long after that. So this film is very important to see, and I hope everyone sees it. I wanted to quickly thank Zeitgeist Films and Kino Now as well for helping organize this conversation. And of course, to you, Halina, thanks again.
Thank you.